There are people listening to me right now who have been praying for doors to open, praying for increase, praying for healing, praying for peace, praying for a breakthrough. And all the while, heaven is ready to move, but something keeps standing in the way. The painful truth is this: sometimes the enemy is not what's around you. Sometimes the enemy is what's within you. Sometimes it's your fear. Sometimes it's your doubt. Sometimes it's your unforgiveness. Sometimes it's your disobedience. Sometimes it's your comfort zone. You keep asking God to change your situation while refusing to change your mindset. You keep asking God to elevate you while holding on to habits that keep you bound. You keep crying for rain, but your hands are covering the very vessel God is trying to fill. God is saying today, I'm not withholding your blessing. I'm waiting for your surrender. I'm not denying your breakthrough. I'm trying to prepare you for it. Some of us are one decision away from transformation, one act of obedience away from favor, one prayer away from freedom, one release away from peace. But we keep delaying the very miracle we're begging for because we won't let go of what's poisoning our progress. Tonight, I came with an assignment to expose every mindset, every habit, every fear, every distraction, and every spiritual blockage that has been standing between you and the next level. Because what God has for you is bigger than your excuses, bigger than your past, bigger than your mistakes, bigger than your pain. But if you want what God has prepared, you must make room for it. You must remove what doesn't belong. You must stop blocking your own breakthrough. Fear has stopped more miracles than failure ever could. Fear has a way of making you question what God already promised. Fear whispers lies in your ear until you begin to believe that what God showed you will never happen. Fear tells you that you're not ready. Fear tells you that you're not qualified. Fear tells you that if you step out, you'll fall. If you try, you'll fail. If you trust, you'll get hurt. Fear is a prison with invisible bars. It keeps your body in one place and your spirit in another. You can see the promise, but you can't reach it because fear has chained your feet. There are people under the sound of my voice who know God has been calling you higher. You know God has been telling you to start the business. You know God has been telling you to apply for the opportunity. You know God has been telling you to walk away from that toxic relationship. You know God has been telling you to forgive. You know God has been telling you to move. But fear has made you comfortable in captivity. You've become so used to surviving that thriving feels unfamiliar. Fear will make you choose what is familiar over what is fruitful. It will make you stay in Egypt when God is calling you to the promised land. It will make you sit in the boat when Jesus is calling you to walk on water. Fear will cause you to talk yourself out of blessings that have your name on them. It will make you shrink when God says expand. It will make you hide when God says arise. It will make you delay when God says now. The enemy understands something many believers forget. If he can't destroy you, he will intimidate you. If he can't kill your purpose, he will attack your courage. He will plant what if thoughts in your mind. What if it doesn't work? What if people laugh? What if you fail? But faith asks a different question. What if it does work? What if God shows up? What if this is the moment everything changes? Some of you are waiting for fear to disappear before you obey God. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving while afraid. Courage is saying, I'm shaking, but I'm stepping. Courage is saying, I don't understand it, but I trust God. Courage is saying, I don't have all the answers, but I know who sent me. Your breakthrough is often on the other side of the thing you fear most. Moses feared speaking, but God used his voice. Esther feared approaching the king, but her courage saved a nation. Peter feared drowning, but he still stepped out of the boat. Your miracle is waiting for your movement. You cannot pray for harvest while fearing the field. You cannot pray for elevation while fearing responsibility. You cannot pray for overflow while fearing risk. Fear is delaying your destiny because fear keeps making you hesitate in moments that require obedience. Today is the day to silence fear. Today is the day to rebuke anxiety. Today is the day to stop letting your insecurities make decisions for your future. The same God who called you is the same God who will sustain you. The same God who opened doors before will open them again. The same God who protected you in your last battle will protect you in this one. Stop blocking your own breakthrough by entertaining fear. Stop letting fear speak louder than faith. Stop letting intimidation cancel your assignment. Stop letting worry paralyze your purpose. This is your season to move, your season to trust, your season to obey, your season to rise, and your season to walk boldly into everything God has prepared for you. Unforgiveness is one of the most dangerous spiritual blockages a person can carry because it often hides behind justified pain. You say, they hurt me. You say, they betrayed me. You say, they lied on me. You say, they walked away when I needed them most. And maybe every word is true. Maybe the wound is real. Maybe the tears were real. Maybe the trauma was real. But the danger is not only in what they did to you, the danger is in what you allow it to do inside of you. Pain can become poison when it is not surrendered to God. Unforgiveness will sit in your heart like a locked door. You'll pray for peace, but bitterness answers. You'll pray for joy, but anger speaks louder. You'll pray for new opportunities, but your soul is still chained to old pain. You cannot move freely into your future while dragging yesterday's wounds behind you. Every time you replay the offense, every time you rehearse the betrayal, every time you feed the resentment, you strengthen the chains that keep you bound. The enemy loves unforgiveness because it keeps your spirit distracted. While you're focused on revenge, you miss restoration. While you're focused on who hurt you, you lose sight of who is trying to help you. While you're nursing the wound, you stop noticing the healing. Unforgiveness clouds your vision. It hardens your heart. It changes your attitude. It changes the way you trust. It changes the way you love. It changes the way you pray. Some people are asking God to open doors while carrying bitterness in both hands. But you cannot receive new blessings when your hands are full of old hurt. God is trying to pour into you, but your spirit has no room because resentment has taken up space. You're asking for elevation while holding on to offense. You're asking for peace while feeding your anger. You're asking for healing while protecting your pain. Forgiveness does not mean what happened was acceptable. Forgiveness does not mean you have to trust them again. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation is always required. Forgiveness means you refuse to let what happened control you any longer. Forgiveness means you release the debt. Forgiveness means you stop giving that pain authority over your emotions, your peace, and your future. Jesus was betrayed, mocked, beaten, and crucified, yet he still said, "Father, forgive them." If Jesus could release mercy in the middle of agony, then with his strength, you can release those who wounded you. Forgiveness is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is a decision you make daily. Some mornings you wake up and choose peace again. Some nights you go to sleep and choose release again. There are people listening right now who have delayed their own breakthrough because they refuse to let go. Your heart has become a prison and bitterness is the warden. But God did not create you to live in emotional chains. God did not create you to spend your life replaying betrayal. God did not create you to carry pain into every new season. Release them. Release the offense. Release the betrayal. Release the anger. Release the disappointment. Let God handle what hurt you. Let God heal what broke you. Let God restore what was stolen. The door that bitterness closed can open the moment forgiveness enters. Peace can enter. Joy can enter. Healing can enter. Favor can enter. Freedom can enter. Your breakthrough may be waiting on the other side of your forgiveness. Doubt is one of the quietest enemies of destiny because it does not always shout. It whispers. It creeps into your thoughts in silent moments and begins to question everything God has spoken over your life. Doubt asks, did God really say that? Doubt asks, will it really happen for me? Doubt asks, am I truly capable? And before long, what began as a small question becomes a heavy burden in your spirit. Doubt has a way of weakening your confidence and shrinking your faith until you start settling for less than what God promised. There are people listening to me right now who once believed boldly. You once prayed with fire. You once trusted without hesitation. You once walked in confidence. But after disappointment, after delays, after unanswered prayers, after heartbreak, doubt moved in. Every setback became evidence in your mind that maybe it will never happen. Every closed door made you question whether God was truly leading you. Every failure made you wonder if you were ever called at all. Doubt will make you second guess your assignment. It will make you hesitate when God says move. It will make you question your worth when God says you are chosen. It will make you shrink when God says expand. It will make you remain silent when God says speak. Doubt will paralyze your obedience because uncertainty creates fear, and fear creates delay. The enemy understands the power of confidence. He knows that a believer who truly trusts God is dangerous. A confident believer prays boldly. A confident believer takes steps of faith. A confident believer speaks life. A confident believer walks through opposition knowing God is with them. So the enemy attacks your confidence first. He plants seeds of insecurity. He reminds you of your past mistakes. He magnifies your weaknesses. He points at your failures and says, see, you're not enough. But the truth is, you were never enough by yourself. God never called the qualified. He qualifies the called. Moses doubted his speech, but God still used his voice. Gideon doubted his strength, but God still called him mighty. Sarah doubted the promise, but God still fulfilled it. Thomas doubted the resurrection, but Jesus still revealed himself. Your doubt does not cancel God's power unless you allow it to stop your obedience. Faith is not the absence of questions. Faith is choosing to trust God when you don't have all the answers. Faith is walking when the road is unclear. Faith is believing when circumstances say otherwise. Faith is standing when everything around you shakes. Faith says, I may not see it yet, but I know God is working. Faith says, I may not understand the delay, but I trust his timing. Faith says, I may have failed before, but this time God will strengthen me. You cannot receive what you constantly doubt. You cannot walk in authority while speaking defeat. You cannot expect victory while meditating on failure. Your words matter. Your thoughts matter. Your expectations matter. Stop speaking fear over your future. Stop speaking defeat over your destiny. Stop speaking limitations over your calling. Today is the day to silence every voice of doubt in your mind. Replace doubt with declarations. Replace fear with faith. Replace insecurity with confidence in God. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are not abandoned. God is still able. God is still working. God is still opening doors. God is still making ways. And the breakthrough you've been praying for may be one act of bold faith away disobedience is one of the most silent yet powerful blockers of divine breakthrough because it often feels small at the beginning. It doesn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes it looks like delay. Sometimes it looks like I'll do it later. Sometimes it looks like partial obedience. Sometimes it looks like selective obedience, doing what is comfortable while ignoring what is costly. But in the spiritual realm, disobedience is never small because it always creates distance between you and divine direction. There are moments when God speaks clearly, but obedience feels inconvenient. He tells you to forgive, but pride resists. He tells you to let go, but attachment holds on. He tells you to step out, but fear argues back. He tells you to change, but comfort keeps you stuck. And in those moments, many people choose what is easy over what is right, not realizing that delayed obedience is still disobedience. Disobedience creates blockage, not because God stops loving you, but because you stop aligning with his flow. Blessings often follow alignment, not intention. You can desire breakthrough deeply and still miss it if your steps are out of sync with God's instructions. The tragedy is not that God is unwilling. The tragedy is when we become unwilling to move when he says move. Look at the pattern throughout Scripture. Whenever people obeyed immediately, something shifted. When Abraham obeyed, provision was revealed. When Noah obeyed, preservation came. When Peter obeyed and cast the net again, abundance followed. But when Jonah disobeyed, he didn't lose God's purpose. He lost peace until he returned to alignment. Disobedience does not cancel God's plan, but it delays your experience of it. Some of you are praying for open doors, but God is reminding you of instructions you ignored. You asked for clarity, but you resisted the last thing he clearly told you to do. You want elevation, but you avoided the process that prepares you for it. You want new seasons, but you have unfinished obedience in your current one. Partial obedience is one of the most dangerous forms because it feels like progress, but it still keeps you outside of full blessing. You do a little, but not all. You obey in areas that are convenient, but ignore the parts that require sacrifice. But God is not only interested in agreement, he is interested in complete trust. True obedience says, even when I don't understand it, I will still follow. Disobedience also hardens the heart over time. The more you ignore divine instruction, the easier it becomes to ignore it again. The more you resist conviction, the quieter conviction becomes. Eventually, you stop feeling the urgency of God's voice, not because he stopped speaking, but because your sensitivity has been reduced through repeated resistance. There are blessings attached to obedience that cannot be accessed through prayer alone. There are doors that only open when your feet move. There are miracles that only activate when your yes is complete. God is not withholding because he is unwilling. Sometimes he is waiting because you have not yet aligned. The uncomfortable truth is that obedience often precedes understanding. God rarely explains everything before asking you to move. He leads first, reveals later. He calls first, confirms along the way. He instructs first, rewards after. And many people miss breakthroughs not because they lack faith in God's ability, but because they lack trust in his timing and instructions. Today is a reminder that delayed obedience still carries consequences. Not punishment, but missed timing, missed flow, missed opportunity, missed alignment. The same voice that guides you into blessing is the same voice you must trust when it challenges your comfort. Your breakthrough is not only in what you pray for, but in what you obey. Comfort zones are one of the most subtle traps that block breakthrough because they feel safe while slowly limiting your growth. A comfort zone is not always a place of ease. Sometimes it is a place of familiarity. Even when it is painful, even when it is unfulfilling, even when it is draining, it still feels familiar. And familiarity can become a prison. Many people are not stuck because they lack opportunity, but because they refuse to leave what feels predictable. There are people who have been praying for change, but resisting movement. You want a new season, but you keep repeating old patterns. You want new results, but you keep using old methods. You want elevation, but you are still attached to environments that keep you stagnant. Comfort zones convince you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into what God has prepared. But safety is not always the same as destiny. Growth always demands discomfort. Every level of elevation requires leaving something behind. You cannot move forward while holding tightly to what God is asking you to release. The tragedy is that many people interpret discomfort as danger, when in reality it is often a sign of transition. God stretches you before he expands you. He shakes your environment before he shifts your position. He disrupts your routine before he reveals your destiny. Comfort zones also limit vision. When you stay too long in the same mental, emotional, or spiritual space, your expectations shrink. You stop believing for more because you have become adjusted to less. You stop dreaming beyond your current reality because your mind has been conditioned to accept limitation as normal. But God never designed your life to be confined to what you can currently manage. He calls you into places that require dependence on him, not reliance on routine. Some of you are praying for new doors, but refusing to walk away from old rooms. You want expansion, but you are still holding on to environments that cannot carry your next level. You want fresh fire, but you keep returning to places that drain your spiritual energy. You want new relationships, but you are still attached to connections that keep you emotionally stuck. Comfort zones feel like control, but they often become cages. There is a tension between comfort and calling. Comfort says, stay where you feel secure. Calling says, follow where I am leading you. Comfort says, don't risk what you already know. Calling says, step into what you have not seen yet. And every breakthrough moment in your life will require you to choose calling over comfort. It will require you to trust God more than your familiarity. Even in scripture, every major move of God required someone to leave a comfort zone. Abraham had to leave his country. Moses had to leave the wilderness back to Egypt. Peter had to leave the boat. Each moment demanded a willingness to step into uncertainty for the sake of destiny. None of them fully understood the process, but they understood the importance of obedience over comfort. The enemy uses comfort zones to delay destinies because as long as you are comfortable, you are unlikely to move. You may still pray, you may still hope, but you will not advance. And stagnation is often disguised as stability. You feel like you are fine because nothing is changing, but in reality, nothing is growing. God is not calling you to a life of comfort. He is calling you to a life of purpose, and purpose will stretch you. Purpose will challenge you. Purpose will push you beyond what feels easy. But every time you step out of comfort into obedience, something in your spirit awakens. There is a version of you that cannot be discovered in comfort zones. There is a level of favor that only appears after you move. There is a breakthrough waiting on the other side of your willingness to leave what is familiar and trust what God is revealing. Next, negative words are not just sounds that leave your mouth. They are seeds that shape the atmosphere of your life. Every word you speak carries spiritual weight, and over time, those words begin to build the world you live in. Many people are not stuck because of what others said about them, but because of what they have been repeatedly saying about themselves. You may not realize it, but your tongue can either open doors or close them, build faith or destroy it, release life or release limitation. There are people who are praying for breakthrough while constantly speaking defeat. You are asking God for increase, but your mouth keeps producing limitation. You are asking for healing, but your words keep reinforcing sickness. You are asking for promotion, but you keep declaring that you are not enough. The contradiction between your prayers and your speech creates internal conflict that blocks your own progress. Negative words are powerful because they shape your belief system. What you repeatedly say, you eventually start to believe. And what you believe, you eventually begin to live. If you constantly say, I can't, your mind begins to accept limitation as truth. If you constantly say, nothing works for me, your expectation becomes failure. If you constantly say, I will never change, your actions begin to align with that confession. Your words are not just expressions. They are instructions to your future. The enemy understands this principle deeply. He doesn't always need to attack you externally if he can influence your internal dialogue. If he can get you to agree with defeat, he has already limited your potential. That is why discouragement often comes with thoughts that sound like your own voice. It's too late. You're not qualified. It won't work. You always fail. These are not just thoughts. They are seeds trying to become belief. Some of you have spoken yourself out of blessings without realizing it. You canceled opportunities with your words before you ever experienced them. You disqualified yourself with negative declarations before God even had a chance to move. Life and death are in the power of the tongue, and many people are unintentionally speaking death over areas God intended to bring life. But there is also power in reversal. Just as negative words build limitation, faith-filled words build possibility. When you begin to speak what God says instead of what you feel, something begins to shift in your atmosphere. Speaking faith does not ignore reality. It invites transformation. It declares that current conditions are not final. It announces that God has the final say. There are moments when you must refuse agreement with negativity, even when it feels honest. Not everything that is true in the moment is permanent in destiny. Your current situation is not your final identity. Your present struggle is not your final story. But if you keep speaking from pain instead of promise, you will reinforce the very thing God is trying to change. Transformation often begins with vocabulary. When you change your words, you begin to change your expectation. When you change your expectation, you begin to change your direction. And when your direction changes, your life begins to follow. God created words with authority. He spoke and creation responded. And as one created in his image, your words also carry creative influence. That means what you consistently declare has the ability to shape what you experience. This is why agreement matters, because every negative confession is an agreement with limitation, and every faith-filled confession is an agreement with possibility. You cannot walk into breakthrough while consistently speaking bondage. You cannot step into elevation while constantly declaring defeat. You cannot experience new levels while rehearsing old limitations. Your mouth must come into alignment with your destiny. There is power in changing your speech. There is power in breaking agreement with negativity. There is power in declaring life over your situation even before it changes. And many breakthroughs begin the moment your words start to agree with what God has already spoken over you. Distractions are one of the most deceptive enemies of breakthrough because they rarely look like destruction at first. They often look like opportunities, conversations, responsibilities, or even harmless habits. But their goal is the same: to pull your attention away from what truly matters. A distracted mind is a weakened mind. A divided focus is a delayed destiny. Many people are not failing because they lack ability, but because their attention is scattered across too many things that were never assigned to them. There are moments in life when God is trying to move you forward, but your focus keeps pulling you backward. You want clarity, but your mind is constantly occupied. You want direction, but your attention is fragmented. You want breakthrough, but your energy is consumed by things that carry no eternal value. Distraction does not always remove you from purpose immediately. Sometimes it simply slows your progress until you feel stuck without knowing why. The enemy understands that if he cannot stop your destiny, he will try to distract your discipline. If he cannot destroy your calling, he will try to dilute your focus. Because a distracted believer prays less intentionally, thinks less clearly, and acts less decisively. Distraction weakens spiritual sensitivity. It makes you miss divine timing. It makes you overlook important instructions. It makes you busy but not fruitful. Some distractions come in the form of people. Conversations that drain your energy. Relationships that consume your peace. Connections that keep you emotionally entangled. Not every relationship is assigned to your next level. Some people are not necessarily bad. They are just not part of where God is taking you next. But when you keep giving attention to the wrong voices, you lose clarity about the right direction. Other distractions come in the form of habits, endless scrolling, constant noise, overthinking, overplanning without execution, entertainment that numbs your spiritual awareness. These things slowly steal your time without you noticing. And what feels like relaxation today can become regret tomorrow when you realize how much time was lost on things that did not build your future. Even internal distractions are powerful. Fear can distract your focus. Anxiety can distract your peace. Comparison can distract your identity. Regret can distract your momentum. When your mind is constantly reacting to internal battles, it becomes difficult to hear divine direction clearly. That is why peace is not just emotional comfort. It is spiritual alignment. There are people praying for breakthrough, but their lives are too crowded for God to speak clearly. You cannot hear direction when your inner world is noisy. You cannot receive instruction when your attention is divided. You cannot walk in clarity when your focus is constantly shifting. Breakthrough requires concentration. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to say no to things that are not aligned with your assignment. Jesus himself often withdrew from crowds to maintain focus. He understood that even good things can become distractions if they are not aligned with timing and purpose. Not every need required his immediate attention. Not every voice required his response. Not every opportunity required his involvement. He prioritized assignment over activity. Distraction will always feel urgent, but purpose is often quiet. Distraction demands immediate attention, but destiny requires sustained focus. The challenge is learning to distinguish between what is loud and what is important, between what is urgent and what is eternal, between what is temporary and what is assigned. You begin to lose breakthrough the moment your focus shifts from what God assigned to what simply appeals to your attention. That is why discipline is spiritual warfare. Protecting your focus is protecting your future. Guarding your attention is guarding your assignment. There is a version of your life that only becomes visible when distractions are removed. There are levels of clarity, peace, productivity, and breakthrough that only appear when your focus is no longer divided. And many times the next move of God is waiting on your willingness to realign your attention with what truly matters. Removing everything that competes with your calling. Surrender is the key that unlocks every spiritual door that human effort cannot open. It is the moment when control is laid down, pride is silenced, and the heart finally says, not my will, but yours. Many people want breakthrough, but they still want to manage the process. They want God's results, but they struggle to release their own control over how those results should come. But true breakthrough does not respond to control. It responds to surrender. There are people who have prayed, fasted, cried, and waited, yet still feel stuck, not because God is absent, but because something within has not fully yielded. You may have given God your words, but not your will. You may have given him your requests, but not your resistance. You may have given him your problems, but not your plans. And partial surrender creates partial experience. God does not force what he desires to heal. He responds to what is fully handed over. Surrender is not weakness. It is spiritual intelligence. It is the recognition that God sees what you cannot see and knows what you do not know. It is trusting that his timing is wiser than your urgency and his path is better than your preference. Surrender is where anxiety loses its authority because control is no longer in your hands. It is where striving ends and peace begins. Many breakthroughs are delayed, not because God is withholding, but because we are still holding on to old expectations, holding on to personal timelines, holding on to emotional attachments, holding on to fear of the unknown. And as long as your hands are full, there is no room to receive what God is trying to place into your life. Surrender often requires releasing things that feel necessary. Sometimes it is a plan you invested in. Sometimes it is a relationship you hope would change. Sometimes it is an outcome you desperately wanted. Sometimes it is your own understanding of how things should unfold. But God's instruction often challenges human logic because divine movement is not limited by human reasoning. There is a powerful shift that happens when surrender becomes real. Burden begins to lift, clarity begins to form, peace begins to replace confusion. What once felt heavy becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying what was never meant for you to control. Surrender does not remove responsibility. It removes unnecessary pressure. Jesus demonstrated ultimate surrender in Gethsemane when he chose obedience over personal struggle. Even in distress, he yielded to the Father's plan. That moment became the doorway to redemption. It looked like loss in the natural, but it was actually the beginning of global salvation. What looks like surrender in the moment often becomes transformation in eternity. There are things God cannot fully release into your life while you are still trying to manage them in your own strength. Because if you control it, you will take credit for it. But if God carries it, only he receives the glory. Surrender protects you from pride and positions you for divine intervention. The hardest part of surrender is not letting go of what is bad, but letting go of what is familiar. Because familiarity feels safe even when it is limiting. But God is not calling you into safety. He is calling you into purpose. And purpose always requires trust beyond understanding. Some of you are one full surrender away from breakthrough, one release away from peace, one yielding away from clarity, one yes away from divine alignment. And the moment your hands stop trying to control what your life should look like, God begins to shape it into something greater than what you could have planned on your own